In a single breath, we can recount the greatest tragedy in human history, the war that engulfed the entire planet. World War II. From 1939 to 1945, for 6 relentless years, humanity was consumed by fire and steel. 61 nations, 2 billion people, over 70 million souls lost. It was a war that stretched across continents, oceans, and skies, leaving the world forever changed. But to understand the war, we must look back. June 1919, World War I had ended. Germany, defeated and humiliated, was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. The terms were devastating: the loss of territory, crippling reparations, and harsh restrictions on its military. The German people felt betrayed. Their economy collapsed under the weight of debt. Inflation spiraled so wildly that bread and milk, once daily staples, became luxuries. Amid this despair, anger festered. It was in these conditions that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party began their rise. In 1921, Hitler seized leadership of the party. 2 years later, he staged the beer hall putsch in Munich, a failed coup that landed him in prison. There, he wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle, a manifesto filled with hatred of Jews, dreams of racial supremacy, and visions of territorial conquest. When he was released, Hitler was no longer just a firebrand. He was a strategist. He reorganized the Nazi Party, shifting from violence to politics. And as the world plunged into the Great Depression in 1929, Hitler's message found fertile ground. Millions of Germans, jobless and desperate, rallied to him. By 1933, Hitler was chancellor. Within months, he had consolidated power, silencing opposition, crushing free thought, and turning Germany into a dictatorship. While Germany armed itself, far to the east, another empire hungered. Japan, facing economic turmoil and unrest at home, sought expansion. In 1931, it staged the Manchurian Incident, seizing vast territory in China. By 1937, the conflict had escalated into a full-scale invasion, and the war in Asia had already begun. Back in Europe, Hitler pushed further. In 1938, he annexed Austria. In 1939, German troops marched into Czechoslovakia. The world watched nervously. Britain and France protested, but did nothing. Then, in August 1939, Hitler struck a shocking deal with Stalin. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression treaty between Germany and the Soviet Union. Behind the scenes, it was a pact to divide Poland between them. On September 1, 1939, the storm finally broke. German tanks thundered across the Polish border. The Blitzkrieg, lightning war, had begun. Within weeks, Poland fell. Britain and France declared war. World War II was now reality. The war spread like wildfire. In 1940, Hitler's armies crushed Denmark and Norway. By May, they surged into Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. Paris fell in just weeks. But amid the chaos came a miracle. At Dunkirk, hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers were trapped. Under constant German fire, a desperate evacuation was launched. Warships, fishing boats, civilian vessels of every kind crossed the channel. Against all odds, more than 300,000 men were rescued. It was not a victory, but it was survival. That summer, Hitler turned his eyes to Britain. The Battle of Britain was the first major air campaign in history. German bombers rained fire over London, night after night. Cities were reduced to rubble, thousands of civilians killed. But Britain did not break. Its pilots, the few, fought relentlessly in the skies. And for the first time, Hitler's advance was stopped. By late 1940, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed the Tripartite Pact, forming the Axis powers. In 1941, Hitler launched his most ambitious campaign yet, Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. 3 million German soldiers surged across a 1,000-mile front. Leningrad was besieged. Moscow threatened. Entire Soviet armies encircled and destroyed. It seemed unstoppable. But then came the Russian winter. German tanks froze. Soldiers shivered to death in the snow. The Soviet people, called by Stalin to defend the motherland, stood their ground. Moscow did not fall. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Japan struck. On December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft bombed Pearl Harbor. The attack was devastating. Battleships sunk, planes destroyed, thousands killed. The next day, the United States entered the war. World War II was now truly global. 1940 became the turning point. In the Pacific, the U.S. struck back at Midway, sinking for Japanese carriers. In North Africa, British and American forces pushed the Axis into retreat. But it was in the Soviet Union that the greatest battle unfolded. Stalingrad, a city turned to hell on earth. German bombers reduced it to ashes. Street by street, house by house, soldiers fought hand to hand. Casualties soared into the millions. In the winter of 1942, the Soviets counterattacked, encircling an entire German army. By February 1943, the once proud 6th Army surrendered. Stalingrad was a graveyard, but also a turning point. From here, the Soviet tide would only surge forward. In July came the Battle of Kursk, history's largest tank battle. Thousands of machines of war clashed in fields of fire. The Soviets emerged victorious, and Germany's offensive power was broken forever. 1944, the Allies opened a new front. On D-Day, June 6th, tens of thousands of soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy. Amid machine gun fire and crashing waves, a foothold in Europe was won. By August, Paris was liberated. To the east, the Soviet Red Army drove relentlessly westward, liberating cities and uncovering the horrors of the concentration camps. By April 1945, the Allies closed in on Berlin. Hitler, refusing to face defeat, took his own life in his bunker. On May 8th, Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. But in Asia, the fighting raged on. The Allies demanded Japan's surrender. Japan refused. Then came a weapon unlike any seen before. On August 6, 1945, an American bomber dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, a second fell on Nagasaki. Cities vanished in blinding fire. Tens of thousands perished in an instant. On August 15th, Japan finally announced its surrender. And on September 2nd, aboard the USS Missouri, it became official. World War II had ended. The war left 70 million dead, entire nations in ruins. Yet its legacy is not just in the destruction, but in the lesson it carved into history. That hatred, unchecked ambition, and blind pursuit of power can consume the world. World War II was not only a tragedy, it was a warning, written in blood, carried by the silence of millions who never returned.